Jeremiah rang the bell, it was no myth. He was seeing it now with his very own eyes, molded to resemble the face of an editor of a book series devoted to innovative nonfiction and much despised by the house's occupant. On the critic's door was plainly written, Broch. The voice of the newscaster erupted from within the house, merging with Sargon's barking. The dog had tensed up, sensing an intruder outside. The door opened. Eyes in which flared just a trace of courteous loathing greeted Jeremiah. A white dry hand limply clasped his own before Jeremiah found himself seated in a high wooden chair, a touch higher than usual, while Broch sank into the depths of his enormous armchair, all the tall tales about the critic's furnishings being proved right before the poet's eyes. It was said that even Broch's furniture penned reviews, late at night, that Broch's bookshelf had trashed more than one novel in the weekly literary supplement, that his rocking chair ran a regular poetry column. "Take off your sandals," Broch suggested. "I'll wash your feet. I've already prepared a bowl of warm water and soap, and I bought a towel just for you." Jeremiah froze in fear, but did as he was told. Broch's colossal private library stood before him like the rampart of a fortress, its height and breadth greater than the National Library's own collection, indeed, containing several volumes that the National Library did not. National Library librarians, and the King's own librarians, would arrive every now and then and abase themselves before the critic so that he might lend them a rare title, while he, they said, prepared them individual library cards, which he then stamped with a violet seal that included each book's allotted lending time, measured not in days, but in quarter hours. "All my books are available for limited loan periods only," he ruled. People would sit in his backyard and thumb through book after book, leaning against the dumpster and the huge gas canisters, copying down in haste whatever they were looking for. "I must say," the critic began as he rubbed Jeremiah's feet dry with a towel, "I was very impressed by your last collection of poems, and even more so by the novel. What a novel! It's a magnum opus. You've written the book of Job for our times," he told Jeremiah, who strapped his sandals back on, aghast, while Broch set a pot of coffee on to boil, which he scrupulously served with sweet pastries. Jeremiah stared suspiciously at Broch's rocking chair, took a sip from his cup, and nearly seared his tongue. The thick layer of foam topping the coffee had been whipped to perfection, clotted and rich, and what it lacked in sweetness was made up for by the delicious sweet pastry, a recipe bequeathed to the critic by the late Mrs. Broch, 1899 to 1969, also the author of a doctoral dissertation on the poetess Bat Miriam. "Allow me to clip your toenails," said Broch. "A poet must be careful to clip his nails evenly. I fear black lint from your socks has wedged itself under your nails. Permit me to poke around in there with a toothpick, and then I'll begin our talk with a few fundamental principles concerning the masterful formation of the character of Frederick in your first novel, Spite," Broch said. And Jeremiah, blood drained from his face, and he started to sweat profusely, and his toenails shook like false teeth in the cold, since he'd never written a novel called Spite, nor had he ever dreamed of conjuring up a character like Frederick. Death had blown in and gotten all tangled up in his hair like a raven, and it, the raven that is, was struggling in vain to free itself. His heart stopped beating. He stood up shakily and set his bitter coffee and the crumbs of his pastry aside. "Sir, will you forgive me?" he stuttered. "There must have been a mistake. I didn't write... And Frederick?" But no. The critic rose to his feet and stood there at his full enormous height, leaning against his similarly enormous armchair, his head striking the ceiling, his arms spreading out and nearly reaching the huge windows. "No? How so? Are you not the author Ernesto Bogushov, born in Buenos Aires, 1940? Jeremiah, who'd never heard of said Bogushov, and was 50 years younger than the signor, muttered that no, he feared not. That it didn't seem to him that no. The critic was stunned for a moment. "I don't understand. Surely you're pulling my leg, my dear Ernesto, making fun of an old critic of Hebrew literature in his dotage.